Well, here we are again. The time is 4:51 p.m. on Friday, 13th of February 2026. Shabbat Shalom, if you happen to be of the Jewish persuasion or cultural motif, or however you are affiliated or non-affiliated, as the case may be. The Sabbath happens regardless of how you or I or anyone else feels about it, or whether we celebrate it or observe it, as the case may be. So yes, I'll continue on with chapter 5 of Birds, Beasts and Relatives, Cuttlefish and Crabs, not cabs. Cuttlefish and crabs. The birdie boys like cuttlefish, don't you, Kermie? You've got one each in your cage, and they sharpen their beaks on it, and they really like it. Right. Each morning, one moment, I just got to take my boots off because they're heavy and my feet hurt. They hurt. I was going to take them off as soon as I got home, and then I made a video for you instead. The earlier video. Ow, ow, yo. I've put on a bit of weight, so my boots are actually, I've got a massive big fucking blister. They're actually a bit tight now. And also they're very old and all the lining's gone, so that's why there's been a bit of chafage. And it's not good, people. Yes, that one, the left foot isn't blistered, but the right one is a bit of a mess. A bit of a mess, people of Earth. Right, let us carry on. I'm organised now. Just have a sip of what's left of my tea. I'm so glad it's raining today. I was so frustrated when the storm blew over last night and there was no rain. I thought, by the gods, I'm going to have to make a rain shaker out of rice and get out there and do a rain dance. But fortunately, the Holy One in all manifestations heard my intention, and it's rained all day today. Not a lot, not heavy amounts, but a good steady drizzling, which is actually kinder to the ground to absorb the rain, and for the trees to actually get a good drink, and refreshing to not just the trees and the plants, but also to us Queenslanders, Brisbaneites, having that coolness and refreshment from the skies. Right, cuttlefish and crabs. Each morning when I awoke, the bedroom would be tiger-striped by the sun peering through the shutters. As usual, I would find that the dogs had managed to crawl onto the bed without my realizing it, and would now be occupying more than their fair share, sleeping deeply and peacefully. Ulysses would be sitting by the window, staring at the bars of golden sunlight, his eyes slit into malevolent disapproval. Outside, one could hear the hoarse, jeering crow of a cockerel and the soft murmuring of the hens, a sound soothing as bubbling porridge. 'Tis a bit like that when they're all clucking together contentedly. As they fed under the orange and lemon trees, the distant clonk of goat bells, sharp chittering of sparrows in the eaves, and the sudden outburst of wheezing, imploring cries that denoted one of the parent swallows had brought a mouthful of food to their brood in the nest beneath my window. I would throw back the sheet and turf the dogs out onto the floor, where they would shake and stretch and yawn, their pink tongues curled like exotic leaves. And then I would go over to the window and throw back the shutters. Leaning out over the sill, the morning sun warm on my naked body, I would scratch thoughtfully at the little pink seals the dog's fleas had left on my skin, while I got my eyes adjusted to the light. I love dogs, but there's nothing worse than when they have fleas, people. And cats when they have fleas. The worst is in the heat here when the fleas breed like no tomorrow, and you get them jumping even on your carpets and the floors. That's most unpleasant. Then I would peer down over the silver olive tops to the beach and the blue sea which lay half a mile away. It was on this beach that, periodically, the fishermen would pull in their nets, and when they did so, this was always a special occasion for me, since the net dragged to shore from the depths of the blue bay would contain a host of fascinating sea life, which was otherwise beyond my reach. If I saw the little fishing boats bobbing on the water, I would get dressed hurriedly, and taking my collecting gear, I would run through the olive trees down to the road and along it until I reached the beach. I knew most of the fishermen by name, but there was one who was my special friend, a tall, powerfully young man with a mop of auburn hair. Inevitably, he was called Spiro, after Spiridion, so in order to distinguish him from all the other Spiros I knew, I called him Coquino, or Red. Coquino took a great delight in obtaining specimens for me, and although he was not a bit interested in the creatures himself, he got considerable pleasure from my obvious happiness. One day I went down to the beach and the net was halfway in. The fishermen, brown as walnuts, were hauling on the dripping lines, their toes spreading wide in the sand as they pulled the massive bag of the net nearer and nearer to the shore. "Your health, Kyrie, Jerry," Coquino cried to me, waving a large freckled hand in greeting, his mop of hair glinting in the sun like a bonfire. I've lost my spot. Can you believe it? Here we are. Today we should get some fine animals for you, for we put the net down in a new place. I squatted on the sand and waited patiently while the fishermen, chattering and joking, hauled away steadily. Presently the top of the net was visible in the shallow waters, and as it broke surface, you could see the glitter and wink of the trapped fish inside it. Hauled out onto the sand, it seemed as though the net were alive, pulsating with the fish inside it. And there was the steady staccato purring noise of their tails flapping futilely against each other. The baskets were fetched and the fish were picked out of the net and cast into them. Red fish, white fish, fish with wine-coloured stripes, scorpion fish like flamboyant tapestries. Sometimes there would be an octopus or a cuttlefish leering up from inside the net with a look of alarm in its human-looking eyes. Once all the edible contents of the net had been safely stowed away in the baskets, it was my turn. In the bottom of the net would be a great heap of stones and seaweed, and it was among these that I found my trophies. Once a flat round stone from which grew a perfect coralline tree, pure white. It looked like a young beech tree in winter, its branches bare of leaves and covered with a layer of snow. Sometimes there would be cushioned starfish, almost as thick as a sponge cake, almost as large. I don't think I've ever seen a cushioned starfish. The edges not forming pointed arms as with normal starfish, but rounded scallops. That's interesting too. These starfish would be of a pale fawn colour, with a bright pattern of scarlet blotches. Once I got 2 incredible crabs, whose pincers and legs, when pulled in tight, fitted with immaculate precision the sides of their oval shells. These crabs were white, with a rusty red pattern on the back that looked not unlike an oriental face. It was hardly what I would call protective coloration, and I imagine they must have had few enemies to be able to move about the seabed wearing such a conspicuous livery. On this particular morning I was picking over a great pile of weed, and Kokino, having stowed away the last of the fish in the baskets, came over to help me. There was the usual assortment of tiny squids, the size of a matchbox, pipefish, spider crabs, and a variety of tiny fish which, in spite of their small size, had been unable to escape through the mesh of the net. Suddenly, Kokino gave a little grunt, half surprise and half amusement, and picked something out of a tangled skein of seaweed and held it out to me on the calloused palm of his hand. I could hardly believe my eyes, for it was a seahorse. A seahorse, people there. Browny green, carefully jointed, looking like some weird chess man, it lay in Kokino's hand, its strange protruded mouth gasping, and its tail coiling and uncoiling frantically. Hurriedly I snatched it from him and plunged it into a jar full of seawater, uttering a mental prayer to Saint Spiridion that I was in time to save it. To my delight, it righted itself, then hung suspended in the jar, the tiny fins on each side of its horse's head fluttering themselves into a blur. Pausing only to make sure that it really was all right, I scrabbled through the rest of the weed with the fervour of a gold prospector panning a riverbed where he had found a nugget. How funny that today I was discussing gold mines with a geologist, whom I guessed was a geologist because he likes rocks, according to his wife. Synchronicity, people, right? Pay attention to the synchronicities. I don't know what they're supposed to actually mean, except that you're awake and aware and flowing with the slipstream of consciousness and timelines and psychedelic dreaming and staying in the seemingly SEAM, carefully stitched fabric of the multiverse. You see, I can't help myself. This is the aspect of me that utterly terrifies people. My cosmic consciousness, you understand? Well, if you died almost 16 times, had 16 near deaths or almost deaths, you'd be cosmically conscious too. You'd guess that a man who likes rocks went into geology as a profession. You'd guess all sorts of things. Some of them you might guess wrong. It was a bit odd on my part, I admit. It was a bit odd. It was an assumption. When you assume something, you make an ass out of you and me, but I happened to get it right, so there you go, people. Oh, that man was so amused. So very amused. My diligence was rewarded, for in a few minutes I had 6 seahorses of various sizes hanging suspended in the jar. Enraptured by my good luck, I bid Kokino and the other fishermen a hasty farewell and raced back to the villa. Here I unceremoniously foreclosed on 14 slow worms and usurped their aquarium to house my new catches. I knew that the oxygen in the jar in which the seahorses were imprisoned would not last for long, and if I wanted to keep them alive, I would have to move quickly. Carrying the aquarium, I raced down to the sea again, washed it out carefully, filled the bottom with sand and dashed back to the villa with it. Then I had to run down to the sea again 3 times with buckets to fill it up with the required amount of water. By the time I poured the last bucket into it, I was so hot and sweaty, I began to wonder whether the seahorses were worth it. Of course they're worth it, my darling. Seahorses are always, always worth it. I had 2 little gold charms. Seahorses are very, for some reason Germans are very fond of them as an emblem, and Auntie Lottie in Germany, who was not my biological aunt but a close friend of my mother, sent me 2 beautiful gold charms in the form of seahorses and a sterling silver charm in the form of a mermaid, which are also very, very emblematic or symbolic in Germany. I've still got the gold seahorse, but the plain gold one, I need to get its jump ring sold, and you make a jump ring and solder it back on, which means I would need to buy some 9-carat gold wire and some gold solder to do it myself, which I have the skills to do, but it'll be cheaper than sending it away to a jeweler. But you know, even a small length of gold real gold, 9 carat gold wire costs quite a bit now. And the expensive part, the really expensive part, would be buying the gold solder. So that's why I haven't done it yet. So it probably would be cheaper actually for me to just take it to a jeweler who already has all the supplies that they need to just quickly solder a little jump ring back on. So yes, I should do that. But anyway, the last jeweler I was going to for many years became more and more dishonest. Stole a tiny pair of little stud earrings, denied having them, and I didn't have the chit anymore, and swapped over my diamonds and my engagement ring. And I know they were swapped over because they used to be very good clarity, and suddenly they were all grey and washed out looking. I thought, these aren't my diamonds. Swapped them out. And how could I prove it? Well, you know what? I should have put up a fucking fight about it, because I actually had the valuation from when the ring was first made. I could have destroyed that man. I had proof that he swapped out the diamonds. But, you know, I was so unwell at the time and didn't really want the reminder of that marriage being worn on my ring finger anymore after I kept that ring for 32 years, and you know, had him renovate it, and it's when I renovated it that he swapped out the diamonds. Anyway, I can't prove it, but it's very fucking evil and dishonest to steal someone's diamonds and put some cheaper quality diamonds, thinking, how can she prove it? And therefore he got away with it, and he should not have. You know, I'd been going to him at that stage for about 14 years. So I was absolutely mortified. Anyway, what does it matter now? Nothing really left to be robbed of anymore, of any real value. It's all been taken from me. Houses, land, diamonds. And the worst that was stolen from me by the COVIDian madness was my daughter's love. That's the worst. That was the last final fucking thing this country stole from me. Bastards. Anyway, she has a choice in that too. So, free will, people of Earth. Free fucking will. Yes, the seahorses were worth it. But as soon as I tipped them into the aquarium, I knew that they were blessed. I had placed a small twiggy dead olive branch in the aquarium. I don't know if that's such a good idea. Anyway. Which I had anchored to the sand. And as the seahorses plopped out of the jar, they righted themselves, and then, like ponies freshly released in a field, they sped round and round the aquarium, their fins moving so fast that you could not see them, and each one gave the appearance of being driven by some small internal motor. So I'm suddenly getting wells of emotion right now. I have to calm my farm. So it's difficult for me sometimes knowing what was stolen from me by other people's evil. It really is. But yes, on the subject of seahorses, I mentioned to you that I live down the road from a marine biologist in Island Bay, Wellington, and I often used to go and take great delight in observing his little seahorses all coiling their tails and swimming and watching them as they grew bigger, and I loved that. I particularly loved that. And like I say, he was a kind man, noble and safe to be around, which is more than I could say for most other people in my family of origin and my fucking neighbourhood. Still, we mustn't think about that. We'll think about the seahorses and the beauty and the sweetness of them. Having, as it were, galloped round their new territory, they all made for the olive branch, and twined their tails round it lovingly, and sat there gravely at attention. The seahorses were an instant success. They were about the only animal that I had introduced to the villa that earned the family's unanimous approval. Even Larry used to pay furtive visits to my study in order to catch them zooming and bobbing to and fro in their tank. They took up a considerable amount of my time, for I found that the sea water soon grew rancid, and in order to keep it clear and fresh, I had to go down to the sea with buckets 4 or 5 times a day. This was an exhausting process, but I was glad that I kept it up, for otherwise I would not have witnessed a very extraordinary sight. One of the seahorses, obviously an old specimen since he was nearly black, had a very well-developed paunch. This I merely attributed to age. Then I noticed one morning there was a line along the paunch, almost as though it had been slit with a razor blade. I was watching this and wondering whether the seahorses had been fighting, and if so, what they used as a weapon, for they seemed so defenceless. When, to my complete and utter astonishment, the slit opened a little wider and out swam a minute and fragile replica of the seahorse. I could hardly believe my eyes, but as soon as the first baby was clear of the pouch and hanging in the clear water, another one joined it, and then another and another, until there were 20 microscopic seahorses floating round their giant parent like a little cloud of smoke. Terrified lest the other adult seahorses ate the babies, I hurriedly set up another aquarium and placed what I fondly imagined to be the mother and her offspring in it. Keeping 2 aquariums going with fresh water was an even more Herculean task, and I began to feel like a pit pony. But I was determined to continue until Thursday, when Theodore came to tea, so I could show him my acquisitions. "Aha," he said, excuse me, peering into, excuse me, peering into the tanks with professional zeal. "These are really most interesting. Seahorses are, of course, according to the books, supposed to be found here, but I myself have, never seen them previously." I showed Theodore the mother with her swarm of tiny babies. No, said Theodore, "that's not the mother. That's the father." At first I thought that Theodore was pulling my leg, but he went on to explain that when the female laid the eggs and they had been fertilized by the male, they were taken into the special brood pouch by the male, and there they matured and hatched. May my ex-husband be blessed to reincarnate as a male seahorse, since he had no feckin' decency or empathy towards me when I was carrying and birthing our children. My idea of the ultimate karmic revenge would be for him to have to birth his own progeny sometime in the space-time continuum, future, present, past, although he did birth kidney stones, which was incredibly painful, I might add, but it would just be the most delicious natural justice if he had to birth his own progeny at some stage in future lifetimes. Anyway, may I be blessed to never give birth again, since all in all the whole experience was less than a positive outcome for me, being left to fucking languish in old age and treated badly every time I was very vulnerable and very ill. It's appalling. It's appalling. It really is. What can I do about it? Nothing. Nothing, people of Earth. Just live my best life and maintain my own honour and integrity as a woman, a mother, a former wife, a former daughter, a former friend, a former Homo sapiens sapiens, since we've all been fucking tainted by the COVIDian alterations, a former what have you. We could go on and on and on, couldn't we? Ad infinitum, to infinity and beyond. If nothing else, I kept my soul intact, and it wasn't an easy task either, given the constant abuse dynamics. Anyway, they were taken to the special brood pouch by the male, and there they matured and hatched. So what I thought was a proud mother was in reality a proud father. And so the strain of keeping my stable of seahorses with a supply of microscopic seafood and fresh water became too great. And so with the utmost reluctance, I had to take them down to the sea and release them. I suppose he hadn't thought that he could buy special, equipment to keep marine aquariums, because they need special tanks and they need special things that oxygenate the water and what have you, lighting. It's quite complicated to keep marine sea life alive. It's partly why I loved going to the marine biology lab so much, because that man knew what he was doing and kept all his creatures alive. They were splendid to look at too. It was Kokino who, as well as contributing specimens from his nets to my collection, showed me one of the most novel fishing methods I had ever come across. I met him one day down by the shore, putting a kerosene tin full of seawater into his rickety little boat. Reposing in the bottom of the tin was a large and very soulful looking cuttlefish. Trying to imagine how a cuttlefish, a living one, might look soulful, people of Earth. Oh well. A Kokino had tied a string round it where the head met the great egg-shaped body. I asked him where he was going, and he said he was going to fish for cuttlefish. I was puzzled because his boat did not contain any lines or nets. Excuse me, my chips are repeating on me. Or even a trident. How then did he propose to catch cuttlefish? With love, said Kikino mysteriously. I felt it was my duty as a naturalist to investigate every method of capturing animals. So I asked Kikino whether it was possible for me to accompany him in order to see this mysterious process. We rowed the boat out into the blue bay until it hung over a couple of fathoms of crystal clear water. Here, Kikino took the end of the long string that was attached to the cuttlefish and tied it carefully around his big toe. Honestly, people that drive up into my street and then what are they doing? It's a bit odd, isn't it? Trying to turn around. And not my monkey, not my circus, people of Earth. Then he picked up the cuttlefish and dropped it over the side of the boat. It floated in the water for a brief moment, looking up at us with what seemed to be an incredulous expression, and then, squirting out jets of water, it shot off in a series of jerks, trailing the string behind it, and soon disappeared in the blue depths. Are you whistling, my little Bobo? Are you whistling to the mama too? Are you a whistling little singing birdie? I love you. Yes. They say, you've been gone all afternoon, Mama. Then you come home and you get on that bloody phone and you make videos and you ignore us, so you might as well be gone anyway. They do have a point, you know. Yes, I'm here. I'm here with you in your room, not paying you full attention, which is extremely obnoxious. I'm as obnoxious as that man in the bistro. Le bistro. Mincing bloody queen he was. No offence to queens. I'm an LGBTIQ ally. But all he was unpleasant. So, all that in a bowl of chips. Who are these people that think they're so fucking privileged? All he does is work as a manager in a bistro. Doesn't make him any better than I am by all the gods. I had a business too at 23. My own establishment. And I gave better customer service than that. Except for the time there was an obnoxious customer that I had to pretty much shut the doors on and almost had to call the police. They were that frickin' nasty. But anyway, I was running a very successful business as a young woman because people liked me. They particularly liked me, and Jared and I were frantically busy and we'd bounce off each other energetically with stress. Oh, they loved the free entertainment, you understand. It was such a successful business that there would be queues all the way down the street on Friday and Saturday nights. So, how dare anyone treat me like I'm some kind of vermin or trash and then not take my cash as well. Ugliness. Ugliness, people of Earth, purest of evil and ugliness. Well, I don't have to go there ever again, do I? But they can't stop me from attending the art gallery. I didn't create any scenes apart from saying to the young lady that I just want a pleasant experience and not be harassed about flashes, when I had actually taken the time to ask how to turn it all off. She was good after that. She was quite understanding. All these ridiculous draconian control dynamics. Like, I get you can't bring an umbrella in because, you know, you get maniacs that would probably go and put the end of the umbrella through a very expensive artwork. Not that I would ever do such a thing, but they don't know. They don't know what level of loop you are, you know. So I get that you have to put that away. You know, that's fine. But the rest is just too much bloody toxicity, quite frankly. Too much. Well, anyway, I had my outing to the art gallery. I guess I can leave it another 2.5 years or more. Or really piss them off by going next week. I do have to go back into the city next Friday because I've got to have a debrief with my psychiatrist at New Farm. So I could swing by the art gallery on my way between bus changing and just prove some kind of point, but I won't. I've seen what I've got to see now, and I've got nothing to prove, people of Earth. I'm the Mama T and I've got nothing to fucking prove. Just saying. Right, I lost where I was up to. I'll have to read that whole paragraph. I vaguely remember reading that, but then on the other hand I don't, so here we go. If I repeat, bear with me. I am the Mama T, but I do get lost in hyperspace sometimes. So let's play that again, so. With love, said Kokino mysteriously. I felt it was my duty as a naturalist to investigate every method of capturing animals, so I asked Kokino whether it was possible for me to accompany him in order to see this mysterious process. We rowed the boat out into the blue bay until it hung over a couple of fathoms of crystal clear water. Here Kokino took the end of the long string that was attached to the cuttlefish, tied it carefully around his big toe. I think that's where I segued off. Then he picked up the cuttlefish and dropped it over the side of the boat. It floated in the water for a brief moment, looking up at us with what seemed to be, yes, I did read that, an incredulous expression. And then, squirting out jets of water, it shot off in a series of jerks, trailing the string behind it, and soon disappeared in the blue depths. The string trailed gradually over the side of the boat, then tautened against Kokino's toe. He lit a cigarette and rumpled his flaming hair. Now, he said, grinning at me, we will see what love can do. What have you done for me lately? L'amour, amore, love, ahava. Trying to think what it is on Maori. Ah yes, aroha nui or aroha. Aroha nui means lots of love. Ahava is Hebrew. Aroha nui is Maori. German is Liebe. What would love do now? It's a terrible realization, you know. at 60, almost 61, to realise that you've never been loved. Never. In real terms, you've never been loved. You've just been tolerated, condescended to, patronised, abused, had people fake friendship for 30 plus years. But you've never actually ever been loved. I could unalive myself about that, but there are bigger things at play than the grief over the realisation that there was never any love for me. Not ever. Not really. Not ever at all. Not even once. But I mustn't become bitter, because the bitterness will kill me, and that's what they want. They want me to just crawl away and die. They want it. That's how hateful they are. Hateful. So in defiance of their petty envies and atrocities and hatred. Let's carry on with the story, people of Earth. Enjoy a beautiful story. Let's see what love can do. Blessed be. He bent to his oars and rowed the boat slowly and gently along the surface of the bay, with frequent pauses during which he stared with intense concentration at the string fastened to his toe. Suddenly he gave a little grunt, let the oars fold to the side of the boat like the wings of a moth, and grasping the line he started to pull it in. I leaned over the side of the boat, staring down into the clear water, my eyes straining towards the end of the taut black line. This is a very long chapter, by the way. I might have to break it up too. Presently, in the depths, a dim blur appeared as Kokino hauled more quickly on the line, and the cuttlefish came into sight. As it got closer, I saw, to my astonishment, it was not one cuttlefish, but two, locked together in a passionate embrace. Swiftly Kokino hauled them alongside, and with a quick flip of the line landed them in the bottom of the boat. So the flip of the line, no, that's not right. So engrossed was the male cuttlefish with his lady love that not even the sudden transition from his watery home to the open air seemed to worry him in the slightest. He was clasping the female so tightly that it took Kokino some time to prise him loose and then drop him into the tin of seawater. The novelty of this form of fishing greatly appealed to me, although I had the sneaking feeling that perhaps it was a little unsporting. It was rather like catching dogs by walking around with a bitch in season on the end of a long leash. Sure, that's been done before somewhere too. Within an hour, we had caught 5 male cuttlefish in a comparatively small area of the bay, and it amazed me that there should be such a dense population of them in such a small area, for they were a creature that you very rarely saw unless you went fishing at night. The female cuttlefish throughout this time played her part with a sort of stoical indifference, a bit like Mama T out at the Copsey. Have to be stoically indifferent with all the predatory drunk creeps around, but there's a few good sorts out there, so just maintain dignity and stoicism and hope for the best. People of Earth, the very best, à la crème de la crème. But even so, I felt that she should be rewarded. So I prevailed upon Kokino to let her go, which he did with obvious reluctance. I asked him how he knew that the female was ready to attract the males, and he shrugged. "It is the time," he said. "Could you then at this time," I inquired, "put any female on the end of a string and obtain results?" "Yes," said Kokino, "but of course some females, like some women, are more attractive than others. And so you get better results with those. I wonder how you can tell between female cuttlefish as to which ones are more attractive than others." My mind boggled at the thought of having to work out the comparative merits between two female cuttlefish. Yes, mine's boggling too. I felt it was a great pity that this method could not be employed with other creatures. The idea, for example, of dropping a female seahorse over the side on a length of cotton and then pulling her up in a tangled entourage of passionate males was very appealing. And Kokino was, as far as I knew, the only exponent of this peculiar brand of fishing, for I never saw any other fishermen employ it, and indeed the ones I mentioned it to had never heard of it and were inclined to treat my story with raucous disbelief. This tattered coastline near the villa was particularly rich in sea life, and as the water was comparatively shallow, it made it easier for me to capture things. I had succeeded in inveigling Leslie into making me a boat, which greatly facilitated my investigations. This craft, almost circular, flat-bottomed, and with a heavy list to starboard, porter's left, isn't it? I think starboard's right, had been christened the Bootle Bum Trinket, and next to my donkey was my most cherished possession. It's a very lucky lad to have a donkey and a Bootle Bum Trinket. Filling the bottom with jars, tins and nets, and taking a large parcel of food with me, I would set sail in the Bootle Bum Trinket, accompanied by my crew of Whittle, Puke and Roger, and occasionally Ulysses my owl, should he feel so inclined. We would spend the hot, breathless days exploring remote little bays and rocky and weed-encrusted archipelagos. We had many curious adventures on these expeditions. Once we found a whole acre of seabed covered with a great swarm of sea hares, their royal purple, egg-shaped bodies with a neat pleated frill along the edge, and two strange protuberances on the head, looking in fact extraordinarily like the long ears of a hare. There were hundreds of them gliding over the rocks and across the sand, all heading towards the south of the island. They did not touch each other or display any interest in each other, so I assumed it was not a mating gathering, but some form of migration. Trying to decide if I'm going to split this video up because I'm quite tired, people of Earth. I'll read a bit longer though. You never know, sometimes I just forge ahead and I finish what I'm doing. You never know with the mama tea. It comes and goes like octopuses on my face. On another occasion, a group of languid, portly and good-natured dolphins discovered us riding at anchor in a small bay, and presumably attracted by the friendly colour scheme of orange and white in which the bootle bum trinket was painted, they disported themselves around us, leaping and splashing, coming up alongside the boat with their grinning faces, and breathing deep, passionate sighs at us from their blowholes. A young one, more daring than the adults, even dived under the boat, and we felt his back scrape along its flat bottom. I'm molting. My attention was equally divided between enjoying this delightful sight and trying to quell mutiny on the part of my crew, who had all reacted to the arrival of the dolphins in their individual ways. Whittle, never a staunch warrior, had lifted up to his name copiously and crouched shivering in the bows, whining to himself. Puke had decided that the only way to save his life was to abandon ship and swim for the shore. He had to be restrained forcibly, as did Roger, who was convinced that if he was only allowed to jump into the sea with the dolphins, he would be able to kill them all single-handedly in a matter of moments. Roger was the dog, by the way, just in case you've forgotten. Why would you forget? If you've been following this channel this long, you'd know that Roger was a dog. I don't know. I just felt the urge to remind everyone. It's a doggy thing to do. To jump in the sea and attack sweet little innocent dolphins. Maybe not every dog. It just seems wildly exciting, I suppose. It's kind of ironic since dolphins are called the dogs of the sea, but that's because dolphins are friendly and playful and boisterous. Rather partial to dolphins, along with mermaids, never seen one in real life though, and seahorses, which I have seen. So there is that. It was during one of these expeditions that I came across a magnificent trophy that was indirectly responsible for leading Leslie into court, although I did not know it at the time. The family had all gone into town with the exception of Leslie, who was recovering from a very severe attack of dysentery. Dear goddess. 'Twas his first day's convalescence, and he lay on the sofa in the drawing room as weak as a kitten, sipping iced tea and reading a large manual on ballistics. I guess shitting and shooting have got some things in common, especially when you have dysentery or worse, colonoscopies. There's a whole new meaning to shooting the breeze or shitting through the eye of a needle at 500 yards. Shit happens. Shits happen too. Right, I think I've finished with that line of reasoning. I'll reel it back in now and behave. Must I behave? Must I? If I must, dear goddess. He had informed me in no uncertain terms that he did not want me hanging around making a nuisance of myself, and so, as I did not want to go into the town, I had taken the dogs out in Bootle Bum Trinket, which is a kind of fitting name for a boat made by a man who keeps getting dysentery. Alright, I'll behave. Couldn't help myself. Sometimes it's a bit like that though, isn't it? In it! It is. All that and a bowl of chips, love. Anyway, as I rode along, I noticed on the small waters of the bay what I took to be a large patch of yellow seaweed. In an alternate universe, that man and I could have been friends, just like in an alternate universe, my daughter and I could have remained friends too. But free will, free will, free will. Fuck it. The seaweed was always worth investigating, as it invariably contained a host of small life and sometimes, if you were lucky, quite large creatures. We were friends until 2023 when the infested finally embedded itself into people's brains. I'm sure that's what went wrong, you know. I'm sure we were fine before that. Didn't always get along in every issue, you know, there was ambivalence on her part, but that was appalling, that was. Utterly appalling. What can I do? Just carry on, living my best life. But as I got closer, I saw that it was not seaweed, but what appeared to be a yellowish coloured rock. But what sort of rock could it be that floated in some 20 feet of water? As I looked closer, I saw to my incredulous delight that it was a fairly large turtle. As shipping the oars and urging the dogs to silence, I poised myself in the bows and waited, tense with excitement, as the Bootle Bum Trinket drifted closer and closer. The turtle, outspread, appeared to be floating on the surface of the sea, sound asleep. My problem was to capture him before he woke up. The nets and various other equipment I had in the boat had not been designed for the capture of a turtle measuring some 3 feet in length. So the only way I felt I could achieve success was by diving in on him, grabbing him, and somehow getting him into the boat before he woke up. In my excitement, it never occurred to me that the strength possessed by a turtle of this size was considerable, and that it was unlikely he was going to give up without a struggle. When the boat was some 6 feet away, I held my breath and dived. I decided to dive under him so as to cut off his retreat, as it were, and as I plunged into the lukewarm water, I uttered a brief prayer that the splash I made would not awaken him, and that even if it did, he would still be too dozy to execute a rapid retreat. I had dived deep, and now I turned on my back, and there, suspended above me like an enormous golden guinea, was the turtle. I shot up under him and grabbed him firmly by his front flippers, which curved like horny sickles from out of his shell. To my surprise, even this action did not wake him, and when I rose, gasping to the surface, still retaining my grasp on his flippers, and shook the water from my eyes, I discovered the reason. The turtle had been dead for a fair length of time, as my nose and the host of tiny fish nibbling at his scaly limbs told me. And he's lucky, actually, because had it been alive and it had descended with him underneath it, he might not have come up for air ever again. By the way, foolish boy that he was. Anyway, disappointing though it was, a dead turtle was better than no turtle at all. And so I laboriously towed his body alongside the bootle bum trinket and made it fast by one flipper to the side of the boat. I guess you could keep the shell after the flesh had decomposed and rotted away. It would be pretty cool to have a real turtle shell. Very valuable commodity, actually. They used to make combs and everything out of turtle or tortoise shell. And it died, from natural attrition, so it's not cruel. It's not like you killed it for its shell. I'm okay with that. Oh, but the stench while it decomposed would be pretty awful. Ugh, yuck. I guess you'd have to bury it for a while, let it get eaten away, and then boil the shell, somehow sterilize it, and then keep it. Anyway, the dogs were greatly intrigued under the impression that this was some exotic and edible delicacy, which indeed it is. They make turtle soup, people of Earth. Germans are very fond of turtle soup. In fact, my Auntie Lottie, my mother's friend, used to send us small tins of turtle soup at Christmas as a delicatesse, as Uncle Case used to call it, but he meant delicacy. The bootle bum trinket, although I don't know if it would be a very nice soup made from a rotting dead turtle. I guess timing is everything in that instance. The bootle bum trinket, owing to her shape, had never been the easiest of craft to steer, and now, with the dead weight of the turtle lashed to one side of her, she showed a tendency to revolve in circles. However, after an hour's strenuous rowing, we arrived safely at the jetty, and having tied up the boat, I then hauled the turtle's carcass onto the shore where I could examine it. It was a hawksbill turtle, the kind whose shell is used for the manufacture of spectacle frames, and whose stuffed carcass you occasionally see in opticians' windows. Never seen that. Yuck. I find that incredibly off-putting. His head was massive, with a great wrinkled jowl of yellow skin and a swooping beak of a nose that did give him an extraordinarily hawk-like look. The shell was battered in places, presumably by ocean storms or by the snap of a passing shark, and here and there it was decorated with little snow-white clusters of baby barnacles. His underside of pale daffodil yellow was soft and pliable like thick, damp cardboard. I had recently conducted a long and fascinating dissection of a dead terrapin that I had found, and I felt this would be an ideal opportunity to compare the turtle's internal anatomy with that of his freshwater brother. So I went up the hill, borrowed a gardener's wheelbarrow, and in it transported my prize up to the house, and laid him out in state on the front veranda. I knew there would be repercussions if I endeavoured to perform my dissection of the turtle inside the house, but I felt that nobody in his right mind would object to the dissection of the turtle on the front veranda. With my notebook at the ready and my row of saws, scalpels and razor blades neatly laid out as though in an operating theatre, I set to work. I found that the soft yellow plastron came away quite easily compared with the underside of the terrapin, which had taken me 3/4 of an hour to saw through. When the plastron was free, I lifted it off like a cover off a dish, and there, underneath, were all the mysterious mysteries of the turtle's internal organs displayed, multicoloured and odoriferous to a degree. So consumed with curiosity was I that I did not even notice the smell. The dogs, however, who normally considered fresh cow dung to be the ideal scent to add piquancy to their love life, disappeared in a disapproving body, sneezing violently. I discovered to my delight that the turtle was a female and had a large quantity of half-formed eggs in her. Oh, bless. They were about the size of ping-pong balls, soft, round, and as orange as a nasturtium. There were 14 of them, and I removed them carefully and laid them in a gleaming, glutinous row on the flagstones. The turtle appeared to have a prodigious quantity of gut, and I decided that I should enter the exact length of this astonishing apparatus in my already blood-stained notebook. With the aid of a scalpel, I detached the gut from the rear exit of the turtle and then proceeded to pull it out. It seemed never-ending, but before long I had it all laid out carefully across the veranda in a series of loops and twists like a rather drunken railway line. One section of it was composed of the stomach, a rather hideous greyish bag like a water-filled balloon. This obviously was full of the turtle's last meal, and I felt, in the interests of science, that I ought to check on what it had been eating just prior to its demise. I stuck in a scalpel in the great wobbling mound and slashed experimentally. Immediately the whole stomach bag deflated with a ghastly sighing noise, and a stench arose from its interior which made all the other smells pale into insignificance. Even I, fascinated as I was by my investigations, reeled back and had to retreat coughing to wait for the smell to subside. Stomach juices will do that to you, I suppose, people of Earth. I knew I could get the veranda cleaned up before the family got back from town, but in my excitement with my new acquisition, I had completely overlooked the fact that Leslie was convalescing in the drawing room. The scent of the turtle's interior, so pungent that it seemed almost solid, floated in through the French windows and enveloped the couch on which he lay. My first intimation of this catastrophe was a blood-curdling roar from inside the drawing room. Before I could do anything sensible, Leslie, swathed in blankets, appeared in the French windows. "What's that bloody awful stink?" he inquired throatily. Then, as his glance fell upon the dismembered turtle and its prettily arranged internal organs spread across the flagstones, his eyes bulged and his face took on a heliotrope tinge, which is a shade of burgundy or purple, people of Earth. Cherry pie, I think, is the other name for heliotropes. "What the hell's that?" I explained somewhat diffidently. That it was a turtle that I was dissecting. It was a female. Just noticing a lot of cars going to my neighbours, but it's Friday night. Maybe they're having a party. Maybe we've got visitors. It's not actually my business. Just wondering because it's an unusual car. But yes, not my business. So carry on reading, people of Earth. Turn into one of those little old ladies that watches all the goings on between the neighbourhood. Not really, not usually anyway. It's just because I'm sitting here, I can see it all playing out in front of me. Whoever they are, they've dropped someone off and they're driving away, so. It was a female, I went on hurriedly, hoping to distract Leslie by detail. Here he could see the fascinating eggs that I had extracted from her interior. "Damn her eggs!" shouted Leslie, making it sound like a strange medieval oath. "Get the bloody thing away from here. It's stinking the place out." I said that I had almost reached the end of my dissection, and that I had then planned to bury all the soft parts and merely keep the skeleton and shell to add to my collection. "You're doing nothing of the sort," shouted Leslie. "You're to take the whole bloody thing and bury it. Then you can come back and scrub the veranda." Lucrezia, our cook, attracted by the uproar, appeared in the French windows next to Leslie. She opened her mouth to inquire into the nature of this family quarrel when she was struck amidships by the smell of the turtle. Lucrezia always had 15 or 16 ailments worrying her any given moment, which she cherished with the same loving care that other people devote to window boxes or Pekingese. At this particular time, it was her stomach that was causing her the most trouble. In consequence, she gasped 2 or 3 times, feebly, like a fish, uttered a strangled "Saint Spirition," and fell into Leslie's arms in a well-simulated faint. Just at that moment, to my horror, the car containing the rest of the family swept up the drive and came to a halt below the veranda. "Hello, dear," said Mother, getting out of the car and coming up to the steps. "Did you have a nice morning?" Before I could say anything, the turtle, as it were, got in before me. Mother uttered a couple of strange hiccuping cries and pulled out her handkerchief and clapped it to her nose. "What," she demanded indistinctly, "is that terrible smell?" "It's that bloody boy," roared Leslie from the French windows, making ineffectual attempts to prop the moaning Lucrezia against the door jamb. Larry and Margot had now followed Mother up the steps and caught sight of the butchered turtle. "What?" began Larry, and then he too was seized with a convulsive fit of coughing. "It's that damned boy," he said, gasping. "Yes, dear," said Mother through her handkerchief. "Leslie's just told me." "It's disgusting," wailed Margot, fanning herself with her handkerchief. "It looks like a railway accident." "What is it, dear?" Mother asked me. I explained that it was an exceedingly interesting hawksbill turtle, female, containing eggs. "Surely you don't have to chop it up on the veranda," said Mother. "The boy's mad," said Larry with conviction. "The whole place smells like a bloody whaling ship." "I really think you'll have to take it somewhere else, dear," said Mother. "We can't have the smell on the front veranda." "Tell him to bury the damned thing," said Leslie, clasping his blankets more firmly about him. "Why don't you get him adopted by a family of Eskimo?" inquired Larry. "They like eating blubber and maggots and things." "Larry, don't be disgusting," said Margot. "They can't eat anything like this. The very thought of it makes me feel sick." "I don't think they eat dead turtles. I mean, they probably eat freshly killed dead turtles, not one that's been putrefying for days. I don't know, I've never spoken to an Inuit about, their dietary requirements and I don't believe they eat maggots, not for one moment. But, you know, the Aboriginal people eat witchetty grubs, which is not a maggot but some weird larvae. So it's possible, I guess, depending on how freaking hungry you are and where you're at. Context and location is everything, people of Earth. Larry, don't be disgusting, said Muggo. They can't eat anything like this. The very thought of it makes me feel sick. I think we ought to go inside, said Mother faintly. Perhaps it won't smell as much in there. I do wish you would break things up, by the goddess. Mama too will have to break things up. I'm trying to break it where it makes logical sense. It's a bit hard, isn't it? Right. We'll carry on finishing off the theme about the story about the turtle, and then I'll break it up when he's no longer talking about the turtle and has moved on to some other train of thought, people of Earth. If anything, it smells worse than here, shouted Larry from the French windows. Jerry dear, you must clean this up, said Mother as she picked her way delicately over the turtle's entrails and disinfect the flagstones. The family went inside and I set about the task of clearing up the turtle from the front veranda. Their voices arguing ferociously, drifted out to me. Bloody menace, said Leslie, lying here peacefully reading, and I was suddenly seized by the throat. Disgusting, said Margot. I don't wonder Lucrezia fainted. High time he had another tutor, said Larry. You leave the house for 5 minutes and come back and find him disemboweling Moby Dick on the front porch. Moby Dick was the famous white whale in the story written by It'll Come to Me. Who wrote Moby Dick? Captain Ahab was hunting the white whale. Come on. You know it, Tanya Aarons. You know it. It'll come to me. I've gone blank. Very famous author too. Oh, it'll come to me. I'm sure he didn't mean any harm, said Mother. But it was rather silly of him to do it on the veranda. Silly, said Laurie caustically. We'll be blundering around the house with gas masks for the next 6 months. I piled the remains of the turtle into the wheelbarrow and took it up to the top of the hill behind the villa. Here I dug a hole and buried all the soft parts, and then placed the shell and the bone structure excuse me, near a nest of friendly ants, who had, on previous occasions, helped me considerably by picking skeletons clean. But the most they had ever tackled had been a very large green lizard, so I was interested to see whether they would tackle the turtle. They ran towards it, their antennae waving eagerly, and then stopped, thought about it for a bit, held a little consultation, and then retreated in a body. Apparently, even the ants were against me, so I returned dispiritedly to the villa. Right, now I'll just continue on that a little bit more. Here I found a thin, whining little man, obviously made belligerent by wine, was arguing with Lucrezia on the still odoriferous veranda. I inquired what the man wanted. He said Lucrezia with fine scorn, that Roger has been killing his chickens. Turkeys, corrected the man. Turkeys. Well, turkeys then, said Lucrezia, conceding the point. Right, I'm going to put a mark here. I don't have a pencil here, but I'll have to go in the other room and find one, by all the gods. I'm going to break it up. I'll come back with part 2, no doubt, tomorrow, because I'm tired now and I need a little bit of a rest. And what's this one? Is that a very long chapter too? That's a very long chapter as well. So there'll be a bit of part 1 and part 2 for the next remainder of this book, I perceive. Maybe, maybe not. So on that note, I bid you good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good night, wherever you are in this blue spiraling planet peopled by humanoids, 1 head, 2 arms, 2 legs, and some sort of torso, abdomen, and, you know, middle bit, like a gigantic Vitruvian man and woman, peopling, inhabiting this earth, and trying to find people that are still at home in their body, minds and spirits is a bit terrifying for me, people of Earth. Found a few that still had some kind of a sense of humour and were still alive in there. Still alive in there, people of Earth. Are you still alive in there? My darlings, my sweethearts, my angels, my babies. I hope you are. Stay pristine, stay aware, stay awake, stay human for as long as you can, my darlings, as a merest act of defiance, if for no other reason, just so that the Mama T can feel like, you know, life still has meaning. Bit dark, I know, but it's getting a bit bloody like that. It's in the lap of the gods, isn't it? What shall become of us all? Anyway, it's been a very spiritually loaded day and I need a rest now. God is blessed. Bye for now. Sending you big agape, universal love from the Holy One in all manifestations. From Ein Sof all right down to Malkut, where we live in 3D reality and physical form. So big love channeled to us from the one who placed our souls into these forms and breathed life into us. Some of us more times than once, babies. Bye for now. Be happy, be blessed, be wild, and be free.